No man is more professional than I. I am a 1% man. I am not above or below any man. I'm training my mind. I'm building my body. I'm connecting to my soul. I'm investing my money. Welcome to the 1% Man Podcast. Let's go. Three, two, one. Welcome back, my brother, to the 1% Man Podcast. I got my good friend Ari here with me. Ari,
hey,
what's up, Ari? That's literally, I love that because that talks to our relationship. I swear to God, that talks to our relationship right there. If you guys ever just have a good friend where you guys just connect, you guys don't really need to like start a start and a stop point. You guys can just like pick up where things left off. That's how I am with Ari. But I really, today's such a great day because Ari's like the, I would say the mastermind behind all the, any course that you see about money that we have. And anytime we talk about money, like she's the one that I go to and I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? Hey, what do you think about this? Hey, what do you think about this? So she's the one that really orchestrates stuff in the background. So you guys would always have somebody like Ari on your side. Ari's a money coach with people making 6, 7, 8 figures. So she understands money like nobody's business. I'll tell you that. She's an expert in her field. But biggest thing, Ari, today, before we dive in and go into, the mindset about money and all that, I want to ask, what is your favorite color and why?
Oh my, I honestly don't have a favorite color because it kind of just depends
don't
on,
be one of those people.
I know,
don't be one of those people.
I have always been like, it just depends on my mood. I'm a very colorful person. But like, I guess usually maybe like some sort of purple-y or like aquamarine or I almost always write in purple pen. All my pens are dead right now, the purple ones, but it's a problem, I guess, for all. But I really don't have one.
So, okay, I'll rephrase the question then. Why don't you have a favorite color? Why is, I guess you can say, all of them are neutral?
Oh my gosh, it's because, like, have you ever thought about how many colors there are in the world? Like, it's the most beautiful thing in the, like, ever. Like, that they just all exist and they're all so pretty. Like, how can you just be like, oh, this one's better? Like, they're not. They're all just like magic. I don't know. I think colors are magical. I was not expecting this question. But I can talk about colors like literally all day long.
I love it. I think that's because of JoJo. I probably lie. But so moving on, I want to ask, so if you had a microphone and you could tap into every brain of every man and implant like one lesson or idea or teaching, what would it be and why?
About money specifically, I'll just stick to that because that's like the topic, I guess. It is that in order to increase the things that you say you want to have and to have it, like you have to focus on expanding your ability to like hold that. Like if I'm like, oh, I want $1 million, but if I know that right now, if somebody came and just like handed me $1 million, I wouldn't know what to do with it. Right. Like whatever, like I'd be like, like I've got to, like, what do I do? Who am I now? Like all these different, and so like my ability to hold what I want has to be there. And like, that's, I don't know how to like say this in like one sentence. It's like, you have to expand. Oh, we talked about with the wine skins. Go
ahead and break it down. You got time. Go ahead and break it down. You don't need one sentence. Take a couple sentences.
Okay, cool. So if in order to, like, you have to consciously expand your ability to hold more. So like, if you're like, oh, I want a bank account that has $50,000 in it, but like you've never had more than $500 in your bank account. Well, the next time you have 1,000, like do everything you can to like hold that there and like look at it and be like, feel how it feels to have $1,000. And then, when you go up to 5 and like, you have to like allow yourself to ride this wave of emotions of like, oh my gosh, like I've got $500 and like, that's really scary because that's not that much. But then, oh my God, like I've never had this much or whatever like all the feelings you have to feel before you touch it and before you move it. And then you get to this place of like neutral. And then now that becomes like a new baseline for every level. You've got to like, but in order to get to the next level, you literally have to put your focus not on just attaining the next level and getting there, but on like actually being able to hold that and hold all the feelings and hold all the like thoughts that can come with that. And that's like in anything, like what it feels like to hold more. You actually have to like put your intention into doing that in order to like get more and in like be happy with more. Which is why, right, like lottery winners, right? People like win the lottery and then like, I think it's something like 75 or 80% of them end up broker than they were before they won. Why? Because they just got the thing and never actually increased their ability to like have the thing. And so they freaked out and then they like did whatever they did with it.
Yeah. So I like to think of it, and how you explained it to me before was that like, what's up?
The wineskins.
So there's a great parable, and I gotta say, so there's a great parable about, I think it's like wineskins, right? That new wine can't go into old wineskins because old wineskin can't hold a new wine. And so they're gonna explode. So in the same sense is that if you want to have $1 million or, you know, 500,000 or even maybe just $500, maybe just starting small, just starting new, is that if you've never had that before, you have to, when you get $500, you're gonna want to go back to probably the mindset of having $250, and you're gonna do and people will do whatever they can. And the best book, Psycho-Cybernetics, said it too well, is that people want to be who they believe they are. So if they only believe they can make $250, then if you give them $500, they're gonna spend that $250, or they're gonna find a way to get rid of all that money so they can have only $250 and then be comfortable again. Because subconsciously, that's all they believe. It's like, I'm only worth this much. That's all I can obtain. So with that being said, and this is a great segue into what we want to talk about, is everybody wants to have more money, but having more money is seen as the most evilest thing in the world, right? I can have more women, I can have more drinks, I can have more cars, more houses, more of everything else in this world. But the notion of saying, you know what, I want to increase myself and my capacity to hold more money, or I want to have more money. How do we do that? Where do we start? Especially if we're starting from ground zero. No one in the family that has ever had a lot of money, but we want to become self-made and get more money. How do we do that?
Yeah. So, I mean, it starts with having that desire and really pinpointing it. So one thing about money, and like in, you know, if you're in any like woo-woo circles at all, people will say like, oh, money is just energy. And that's true, right? Like if you had a bank account with like $1 billion in it, but you couldn't spend it and you couldn't take it out and you couldn't do anything but look at all the zeros online, right? That was all, like, it would be exciting for all of 5 minutes, right? So when you start to have this desire for money, something that can really be helpful is like attaching what that desire, like, where's the money going to go? What do you want to do with it? Oh, I want $1 billion because I want to change, like, I don't know, work on climate change and help save the earth. Or I want $1 billion because I really want a yacht. And I think that $1 billion would, like, I'd look really badass on a yacht and it would be my own. Or like, I want to live on a private island because I'm sick and tired of talking to people. Like, whatever it is that is like attached to that number that you desire, figure out like, what is that? Where does that? And then now that gives you like an energy to flow to, right? Like, money now has this home. And so like when you give money a home, it's like, oh, great. Like, I would love to be spent on that. And like, that feels so good. So then like money shows up for that versus just like, oh, I just want $1 billion because I want to look at zeros in my bank account. That's not exciting. So you're not really going to be motivated by that for very long. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
true.
So I would start there. Like, why do you desire the money? What do you want it for? And then you put together a game plan, right? Like, the only way to have more money is to either make more or spend less. And at a certain point, you can only spend, like, you can only cut so many things before, like, you know, like, you got to eat and have clothes on your back and a place to live and things, right? So you can only cut so much. So then you start to figure out, like, okay, well, where is my skill set to earn money? And like, where can I where am I being like undervalued in the work that I do, right? So money flows, it doesn't only flow to where the highest value is, but it flows to where the highest perceived value is, right? Which is why like I can buy a shirt at Walmart for $3 because my perception of the value of that shirt is only $3. Or I could go to, Fendi and spend $3,000 on a shirt. It accomplishes the same thing, but the perceived value is different. So if you're not making enough money in your job, or, so do you need a new job, or do you need to up your skill set, or do you need to just like go ask for a raise? Like, where is the value of what you are doing? Like, how is that being perceived, and how do you increase the perceived value there?
I want to put a point on that, and I have to ask, how can a man increase his perceived value for himself? Is it possible for us as men to increase our perceived value? And what's the outcome of doing that too as well?
Oh my God, it will change your whole entire life. Literally. Like money, I always say this, money is just like, money problems they're just other problems. Like typically people they're like, oh, I'm not making enough. Like that's like a self-worth issue. And money is just like a very quantifiable way to see like how you feel about those other parts, right? So right, like there's a point where you have to actually increase the value, right? Like, do you need a degree to do you need to go take a class? Do you need to learn something? You need to like actually increase, like get better at and increase the real value of that, whatever it is. And like, so you'll feel, I had a coach, she always used to say competence leads to confidence, right? So when I know that I'm a badass at money coaching, and I know that. And so like, I can look myself in the mirror and say like, I know exactly what I'm talking about. I am educated. I have helped all these people. Like I know what the hell I'm talking about, and I can feel confident about that. Right. And then there's like the deep inner work, right? Of like looking at different wounds and looking at different places in myself where I'm afraid to show up, or where I'm afraid, like if I'm not perfect, that like, I don't know, that I'm not good enough if I'm not perfect. And I have to look at those things. And that's now where perception, that perceived value comes in, right? Like, am I not good enough, or do I just feel not good enough right now? Okay, why do I feel that? Where did that come from? Like, where, what's all hanging out in there, and start doing that deep inner work to shift those stories and to shift those beliefs that I have like about myself. And then that's now the actual value and the perceived value then go hand in hand, and you can walk out like, okay, great. Like now I feel like I'm like financially I can bring in this. And then after a while, right, like the real goal is when your self-worth and your money are not, because I almost even just said it, like now I'm worth this much money, and like, no, like now I'm worth infinite everything that I desire because of who I am and like the fact that I exist, and my desire is this much money, and they become completely separate, right? That like of like who I am is no longer tied to how much money I make. They're totally separate things.
I love that you went right into that, because I was just about to ask, is a lot of us as men, we attach our self-worth, especially I think, especially if you live in a capitalistic society as like we do in America, is that we attach our worth to money. Like the more money we make, the more worthy we feel, the more we're like, oh, my presence is just like, take it in. You know what I mean? Because like I have X amount of dollars, like, hey, like I'm the shit. But when we detach ourselves and we are able to see like, hey, I'm infinitely valuable, but yet, you know what, I do desire this type of money, this type of, monetary gain, we can go out and go get it. And I love that. And is there a point that once we get to a certain level that we don't even need a budget anymore, or we don't even need to even worry about money? Or do you think that that there's like a healthy way of going about as you grow, still looking at money and still transforming our minds every day, renewing our minds every day with the view about money?
Yeah, 100%. So definitely when you're first starting out, right? If it's that question, like if it's like a paycheck to paycheck cycle,
yes,
you should be watching like down to, like the dollar, right? And just like being very aware, seeing where am I spending that it's not in alignment with like what I say that I want, and like where do I need to be making more, and like what's the difference, right? And then once you kind of get to a place where you're like, okay, I know that like all of my bills can be covered on I don't know, whatever, you get paid twice a month. All of my bills are covered on paycheck number one. Right now you have this whole extra paycheck. So then you start to like look at it like, okay, what are some of the like long-term goals? And so, you know, where else can I be putting that money that is once again still in alignment with like what I want? And then you get to a certain point where you're like, you know, completely forget it's payday because like there's just always extra money on hand. And I don't necessarily, I mean, like a budget, all a budget is, right, is not necessarily like I wrote out my expenses and my income. A budget is basically saying, I know before money gets into my hand exactly where it's going. And I've decided, I've made the choice beforehand to know where it's going. So I think from $0 to $1 trillion, like you should have that, right? And so it's going to look different as you have more and more money. It doesn't need to be down to the dollar. You know, I'm like now I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, cool. I spend 10% of my money on this type of activity and like this thing, because the dollar amount is like, I already know that the basics are covered. So the dollar amount doesn't really matter, but like, okay, I have my percentages and I split it up that way. And then like, there's people like, what's his name? Ramit Sethi, who wrote a book called I Will Teach You to Be With. Yeah. Love him. And he talks a lot about money dials. And these are like the places in your life that you're like, man, if I spent more money here, it would increase my happiness. And he's like, you know, when you start having like more and more money, turn the dial up, right? And then like you can do that and you can feel good about that. But that's still in my mind, the way I define budget at least is kind of like a budget in essence, right? Because you're still deciding this is where I want my money to go and this is how I want my money to work for me. And that to me is like a budget conceptually. It just looks a little bit different at each stage, right? Like you don't have to get as granular. If you got $1 million in the bank and your expenses are only 500,000, like you don't have to get that granular because you still have a lot left over, but you should still know what you want to do with it, or else, you know, it's easy to part a fool with their money. So you know what's going on.
True. So I know I've asked you this question before, and I think this is a great question to ask here is, as a man looking to have a family and to have a wife and to have kids and all that, how can we, and even a listener, you know, how can we start adopting more of a, how do I say this? I don't want to say like wealth mindset or even like a leader type mindset, but putting ourselves in that father role of where we have to look over the finances and be able to say, okay, we got to start delegating as if we're the head of the household. How can we start putting ourselves in that role? Is there things that is it, you know, tactics, or is there a skill that we can learn, or is there something that we can start doing now to prepare us for the future?
Yeah. So making money a habit, right? So I call them money dates, right? Once a week or at least twice a month, sitting down with your finances, going through it, just getting that clear picture of like what's going on. You know, are the decisions that I made in the last week in alignment with my goals? And if they are, great. If they're not, what do I need to do next week to change that and to like become more in alignment? And so whether like I like to take myself on a date because it makes me feel fancy and luxurious, but like whatever that is that you're spending that time intentionally. And also like looking for, I guess as a female, right? Like with the desire to be led by a male, what I would want to see from him is, just that the things that he does come from a place of like conscious choice. And I think that's like a really, like, to me, that's leadership of like, things are not just like happening. He's not just like allowing things to just happen, whether that's financially or job wise or health or whatever. But that he kind of looks and says like, okay, cool. Like life is not happening to me. I am like co-creating life at the same time. And so I'm making these decisions and there's intention behind them. There's real thought behind my actions and behind the things that I get up and do every single day. And even when, right, even if like, it's like, oh, I want to play video games for 2 hours a day, when that comes from a place of like conscious choice versus like, oh, I ended up on the couch and like, it was 2 hours later, like even that to me is still a sign of leadership of like, whatever it is that you're doing with your time and your money and your energy, it comes from a place of choice, because if you can do that for yourself, I know that you can do that for like me and for our family, and that like, I can trust that that's like a skill you've got.
Now, partnership, and I'm glad that you brought it up, right, too, as well.
Mm-hmm.
Is how do you talk to a partner that is a little reluctant or that isn't as money conscious as you? How do you bring that up if they're very defensive, or maybe they deflect money, or maybe they've seen money as being a bad thing? How do we open that gateway to be able to expose them to this reality of money being abundant and having a more of a wealth mindset? I know I hate to say it like that, but more of an abundant mindset. I think abundant is better.
Good term, because wealth is like everything, right? It's not just like, yeah, there's money in the bank, but wealth to me says like legacy and like generations forward, and it's like a holistic thing. So I think wealth mindset is actually like a great term. But okay, so like you can't change anybody, and you are gonna drive yourself bonkers trying to. So the first thing, and I've had to do this in many relationships, is showing up for yourself, right? Like being the model. That's the word that I'm looking for. Modeling it for them, right? Like when my partner sees me every week sitting down with my notebook and sitting down with my bank statements, like they're even like, and then they start seeing the results. Wow, hey babe, like my bank account's growing. Like look, like it's working, right? That's going to pique people's curiosity, because seeing someone tell you should be doing a budget every month, like, okay, cool, thanks. Like, I'm an adult, like I'm going to go do my own thing. Like if you're not doing it, it's not even work. Like, let me see it work for you first. Right. So seeing like your wealth mindset shift and being open to share in a very, like leaving shame and guilt at the door. Right. So that's where a lot of money fears and worries come from, is like and you started it with, right? Like whether you have money or not, we're somehow supposed to just like feel like if you're poor, you're supposed to feel bad about that. And like, you're less of a person because you're broke. And if you're really rich, like how dare you have so much money when there's so many poor people out there, right? Like there's this weird thing that society says. So it can be hard for people to talk about money because they feel like, oh, I'm supposed to feel guilty about this. I'm supposed to feel shame about this topic, regardless of what it looks like. And so opening that door and like creating a really safe, open and honest line of communication and letting you know, like, look, I'm not here to judge, like whatever it is, good, bad, indifferent, and not even good or bad, right? Like in alignment or out of alignment with what we want. Let's just talk about it, because once we've talked about it, then we can make a game plan to get there. If we're not, and it really, but it definitely has to be a very like judgment-free space. And I think it's hard to do that for another person if you haven't learned to do it for yourself yet, which is why I say like start with you and like start modeling that for yourself and for them to see first before trying to open that door.
Love that. I love that. I think one of the hardest things to do is to start to share even your ideas about life and especially I think when it comes to money, because money has so much emotions and it's almost like somebody's past experience with somebody else, right? It's just, especially in relationships, it is so hard to share your own ideas with someone because someone else already comes in with their own ideas, and not a child, an adult with their own perceived notions about life and different things, but especially with money, with the shame, with the guilt and the emotions attached to it. It's so hard to move over that. And I love how you shared that. Now I know our time is running out. So last question before we go is, what is something that's within you that you want to share before you go, whether it's a lesson you learned this year, or whether it's a story that you always like to tell people, or whether it's a value that you hold true to yourself? What is something that you'd like to tell everybody before you go?
Okay, so this one's actually very recently learned, but it's like changing my whole life. And I just feel like we're gonna have to have a whole other conversation on this topic alone. But that having anything like in your life, especially when it comes to repeating patterns, but anything that you have means that you want it. So whether you perceive it as a good or bad or indifferent or whatever, if you've got it, that alone is like proof that there is some part of you that wants it. And so when I've started approaching like everything. Like I'll get like pissed off at my boyfriend because like he, I don't know, whatever, like didn't clean the kitchen. And I'm like, okay, cool. So he frequently doesn't clean the kitchen and I frequently get upset by that. So the fact that that's showing up in my life means that there's some part of me that like wants this, right? There's some, I'm enjoying some piece of this puzzle right here. And then I start like digging and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like if he doesn't clean the kitchen and then I can spend like, I can get mad at him and I'm totally like, I've got this righteous indignation and like, that feels really good. I feel so justified being irritated right now. And I can like be in a shit mood and like, so, okay, cool. So you kind of like enjoy the fact I've been like reading this book and highly recommend. It's called Existential Kink and it's so freaking good. It's like changing my life. But when I start doing that for like everything, and I started doing that with money and just kind of never extrapolated out to like everything. But like, if you have no money, if you consistently have no money in your bank, there's some part of you that like secretly wants the scarcity that you're attracting. And like the scarcity, like there's a part of you that maybe loves the thrill of like, oh my God, it's the 28th of the month. How am I going to pay rent? And like you end up being able to like blow your own mind coming up with the rent money in 3 days. And it's like this like there's like a thrill behind it. Right. And so then like you start like digging into these patterns and you're like, oh, that's why I keep doing this to myself. And I think I don't want it, but like I really do. And so the concept of just like, if you have it, there's a piece of you that wants this. And if your conscious mind is like, no, I actually hate running around for my rent on the 28th. It freaks me out. Then now that like you can identify the piece that like wants it and like what you're gaining from it, it's like, then can you like dig in and be like, okay, cool. Like, how can I gain excitement like in a different way that I like enjoy more than like the thrill of trying to find money on the 28th? That has been like a game changer. Totally like took a left turn on the whole conversation we were having, but like that concept is like changing my whole life.
I'm totally okay. You have to hold on because we're gonna have to talk about that definitely. And I love that. I'm definitely have to bring you back on because I love that, and keep digging into that because I'm definitely gonna get that book. But my brother and my sisters out there listen to as well. Thank you so much for listening. Now, Ari, where can people get more information about you? Do you want to do website, Facebook? Where are you most active on the platforms?
You can find me on Instagram at Badass Budget Babe. And that's probably where I'm most active, but that will be changing in the future. Hopefully I will finally start to use social media like a millennial one day.
No, totally love that. So Badass Budget Babe on IG, as well. And then in the show notes too, you guys will be able to see her website and her Facebook and give her a shout out too as well. I told you she's totally amazing. So, remember my brother, your legacy starts today. Thank you, my friend, for tuning into today's episode. This means so much to us over here at the 1% Man community. Now, we want to extend a hand of gratitude to you. So I have a free gift for you. All you have to do is go to www.the1percentman.com/podcast gift. This is an exclusive gift for listeners that tune into our podcast. So go over there, get that free gift as well. And now I have 2 simple acts of you. 1, hit that subscribe button and leave us a comment and a 5-star review because that helps us to see what you love about the podcast and that helps us to bolster up in the rankings so more people can find us and listen to this pertinent information that we have for men of today's age. Last but not least, I want you to go back and listen to this podcast. Find just one thing that you can implement in your life today so you can move forward. Remember, progress over perfection. And till next time, my friend, your legacy starts today.